Hey everybody. Today we're looking at the first build of the PC beta for Metal Gear Online. Now I know this has been available for consoles for quite some time, but I personally am very excited to see this multiplayer mode coming to PC, as Metal Gear Solid 5 was my favorite PC game of 2015. By the way, if you haven't seen my video for that, link to it in the description down below. I think you'll enjoy it. But what I'm going to do here today is show you some highlights from a few matches that I played and give you some thoughts and general impressions on MGO from the time that I've spent with it thus far. One thing I'm happy to note is that matchmaking has started working, which was actually a bit of a problem when the game first dropped on Steam last week. I was actually having to go in and select matches manually for the first couple of days that I was playing this, but it seems like now automatic matchmaking is actually functioning again, so I was able to take that off my list of complaints without even getting a patch for the game client itself. Just to speak for a moment generally about the gameplay of MGO, I have to say, as someone who was a big fan of MGO for Metal Gear Solid 4 on the PlayStation 3, I think this is a good step in the right direction in terms of making the MGO concept more accessible and more generally fun gameplay-wise, while still keeping a lot of the quirkiness and the awesome, unique characteristics that MGO has always had in terms of trying to be something more than just a run-and-gun typical shooter experience. So you can see here, I'm actually playing a mode called Bounty Hunter, and the premise of this mode is that what you want to do is try to incapacitate the enemies as opposed to killing them, and then Fulton extract them to get bonus points for your team. Basically, when people go around killing people, they build up bounties, and then when you Fulton extract them, you collect that bounty for your team, which is actually a pretty valid way to win that mode, as opposed to just simply killing enemies. Now, I do have to talk for a moment about the voice chat options in this game, which are a bit of an issue. One of the things that I really don't like about MGO in its current state is at the beginning of pretty much every match, you have to go in and manually mute everybody else. There's also no option to mute yourself, so if you have your mic open, say if you're talking to some friends on TeamSpeak or Ventrilo or some other VoIP solution, and you happen to be playing this game, then anybody else who's playing the game with you will be able to hear you talking, because there is no push to talk option and there is no ability within the game to mute your mic. So I think those are definitely things that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. One positive thing I will talk about is the Buddy Link system, which I think is a really cool and smart inclusion to this gameplay. Basically, you have the ability to look at anybody else on your team and press the V key and create a link between you and them, so that if you stay in proximity to them, you'll get points for anything that they do that's positive. You'll be able to tell if they're in trouble and be able to assist them and set up basic tactical maneuvers. You can see here in this particular example, my buddy and I pull a pretty wicked flank on this Walker gear and manage to take it out. And that's just one simple example of how the Buddy Link system can really help you coordinate with your teammates without having to use something like voice chat or be explicit in terms of indicating to your teammate what you're actually trying to do. Just by paying attention to the information the game generally presents you with, it's really easy to coordinate your efforts with your teammates and have a pretty good, positive experience without having to worry about listening to people breathing through their microphones because there's no push to talk. So here we have another thing I wanted to point out, which is that every class you play in the game has certain special abilities. In particular, here I'm playing as the Scout, which has these grenades that you can toss that mark enemies when they come into their proximity, and then any enemies who are killed whenever they are in the proximity of your grenades and therefore marked gain you bonus points. So it's to your own personal advantage to use them because they can get you extra points and help your score, but they also help your team in terms of pointing out enemies and making them aware of them on the battlefield. So it's pretty much a win-win, as opposed to the lose-lose, which is what this guy had when he came around the corner on me. And this really just goes to show how important it is to work with your team and stay in proximity to them. I think this last clip in particular really showcases just how vital it is to work with your team in this game. Had I not been buddied up with this guy and we had not been covering each other's backs, this situation would have gone very differently than it did. And unfortunately, my buddy did end up dying here, but I think it's still a good illustration of just how important teamwork is in this game. So to wrap things up, I'd have to say that I'm really enjoying MGO so far. I would definitely like to see a couple of things addressed, specifically the voice chat stuff, which I think is very annoying, especially given what's sort of the standard or the norm on PC for that sort of thing. And I would also like to see the option to load directly into MGO instead of having to load the single player and load back into single player when you're finished with the game. But other than that, I think this is a pretty awesome start, and I'm very encouraged by where they are, considering that this is still a beta. That's going to do it for me for now. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. If you want to see more from me in the future, be sure to hit subscribe. And I will see you next time.